What's going on YouTube? Welcome to another video. It's episode 26 of the series here. We're starting off on bench. And as you know, easing kind of back into things. Starting off with the bar, eventually I'll just, start jumping up with like the one rep like I used to. Once everything is kind of healed, once everything's feeling good again, I'll go back to kind of the way I was training before, with the exception of not getting injured. But basically similar warm-ups. A lot of this is just additional precaution to make sure everything's fine with me. Slow, controlled, consistent is basically the formula that I'm using. And we'll eventually transition back into how we were training before. So it's not really anything to be concerned of or to really consider. Everyone's kind of different with their warm-ups. I tend to find the more efficient you are with your warm-ups, the better it is overall to get to where you want to be. So ultimately, choose what works for you depending on like your weight and how high you're going to go. That's basically been my philosophy, and I've changed it. I used to be super incremental and used to do 40 to 50 pounds, at least on lower body stuff for warming up, and like 30 pounds for upper body stuff. But then you realize, you just spend a lot of time getting to where you need to be, and once you're there, it just makes it an easier time to hit your working sets, and then maybe if you're trying to PR, just to be more efficient with that so you've got more energy. So 220 bench here, and this is starting to feel really good, moving really well. Not many shoulder issues, just going back to feeling how I was before the injury and the surgery, of course. So really happy about that. The line that I pressed through, relatively linear. Not a lot of deviation on the bench. So pretty straight up and down, pretty efficient, just really long forearms, so it's kind of sometimes hard to touch chest, but I'm just happy to be able to be benching what I'm benching now. And it's been a struggle. You'll see more with videos to come. I'm kind of talking from a future standpoint, but just kind of reminiscing back on these lifts and stuff, and you start to realize that it's just time and consistency, and to pull back and to do what you need to do to get to where you need to be, and then go from there. So OHPs is starting to feel better too. Just a lot smoother. I'm still going to kind of limit that range of motion and just kind of press where I need to press. I'm using my forearm basically where my wrist is, where I get to level with my chin and then press from there. For years I would touch clavicle, and I honestly think that may have caused some mobility issues just because you're not really engaging the shoulder at that point. It becomes more of like a chest, an upper chest, a very, very inclined upper chest type of exercise. So for me, I think this is just the easier way going forward, and just better consistency over time, carry over, and just feels better. Flat dumbbell bench here, I just feel if you're doing any sort of barbell exercise, do the dumbbell version too. A little bit of shirt pulling up on me though, but basically it is what it is when it comes to injuries and stuff, but you can take precautions, you can increase range of motion, you can do other things to help you, mitigate that risk. Obviously, training in full range of motion means that you won't be weak anywhere. You may not be able to move as much weight though, but at least at the same time, you'll be able to, have the strength in the hole. So if you dip below something that you maybe weren't in before, like a range of motion, there's no, if you haven't trained there, you're not going to be very strong there. You could get injured. So just as a precaution, plus dumbbells, you can get a really nice contraction. You can manipulate the dumbbell handles in a way where you can get that ideal, range of motion and angle. And really just hammering these and just trying to remember the fundamentals on the bench press. Just try to keep that scapula retracted, back driven into the bench, and then drive through your feet. I get antsy sometimes, and I'll adjust my feet if I feel like I'm getting too loose or whatever, or I feel like I'm losing, not the arch, but just driving into the bench, and you'll kind of see my feet will do those readjustments there, and I just go by feel. So if it's moving well, I'll stay where I want to be, and if I feel like I could be more efficient, you'll kind of see stuff like that. And I've been slowing down these cable flies just to really feel the contraction, feel where my shoulder is comfortable, and then, finishing with like a squeeze at the top. I used to do these way too fast, way too much weight, and just trying to find that midline where you want to, have the meats to get that contraction was kind of important. So when you're somebody who's a little bit bigger with bigger lats and you're laying on a bench that's not the widest, it's a little bit more difficult. You'll see me, I'll kind of do one of these I'll plant my back and then I'll kind of shift down. So it's more of like I'm adding a little bit more of a horizontal element to the lift, kind of getting that arc and curvature that you really will feel in the pecs. You know, when you do like a standing crossover, a little bit of an arc and angle, you're not just going straight up and down, you're kind of going across the chest in order to get that full contraction. And that's kind of what I've emulated here. I've just found a couple different ways to do that. Then some closed grip pull downs here. It's never a bad idea to do more back work. It's hard to get a back contraction for a lot of people, and then once you've kind of figured it out, it's really cool to be able to emulate that. You know, retract the scapula, push those shoulder blades back, and really just touch that chest, and you'll get a nice contraction on any back exercise you do. And I found kind of maintaining that tension and then the controlled release up is really the key here. If you go too fast, one, I don't want to get re-injured, and then second, you can really feel that contraction and get a little bit more out of it without having to do as much weight, which for some people that can make a big difference if you have joints and previous injuries. So you'll see here on these single unilateral rows, super important, I think, just to get my confidence back in my lat pulling ability, but also to get that extra stimulus. There's a little bit of a different range of motion I use on the left side versus the right side, and that's just from the injury, obviously, shoulder placement and stuff like that. I just feel like I can get a lot more contraction easier on the right side that's not injured, and you'll kind of see the elbows a little bit closer to my torso, which, you know, you just have to work around and move. You can always get the mobility back, you know, with stretching and mobility, additional work after the fact. But I'm just trying to get this, you know, bicep and shoulder joint to be able to, you know, feel normal again in that position. You'll kind of see it here. I'll kind of pull further out where it's a little bit more flared compared to the other side where I can really tuck really well, and that's just mainly for the shoulder thing. If I get too close, you know, it just doesn't feel off. It just feels like there's a little bit more tension. So I really want to get that stretch across too, though, controlled though, so I can get some stretch into the bicep and everything, and just try to get back to normal. I'm actually surprised I filmed so many sets of this, but you know, it is what it is. There's little tips and tricks and stuff I'll share and pick up, you know, in these videos. If people ever want to like get some in-depth details and stuff, I'm happy to share. There's just little tips and tricks that you pick up throughout the years lifting. You know, you hear all these cues and stuff though, but everyone's body's different, and you use the feedback on your body to figure out, you know, what works for you and what doesn't. So again, dumbbell curls, just anything unilateral, and you can kind of see the big stark difference between efficiency here. There's just a lot more going into, you know, the injured left side, and the contraction isn't the strongest, so I try to focus on it. I try to use the right side. I'll cue a certain position where I'll kind of hold the dumbbell like that, and then I'll try to put all my effort into getting that contraction, but just for rehab, mobility, to get better overall. And again, not heavy. I've never been the greatest curler. I've got weak wrists and forearms. So, you know, barbell curls, dumbbell curls have never been my strong suit. Hammer curls, yes, but any sort of supinated relating lift is always a little bit limiting for me. And then just tricep extensions, slow and controlled. I used to do these way too fast, and I'm really feeling the contraction now. Sometimes it will be a little bit uncomfortable in the elbow. If you get the right angle and you take care of all that, you should be okay though. So like no worries on that. And just do slow and control. Control the weight, try to find a range of motion that works for you, and, you know, do the work. If you want to heal any sort of injury or muscle group, you have to work everything surrounding. So in the arm, you've got the tricep, you've got your forearms, you've got the bicep, the shoulder, work all of it. Get everything strong together and you'll be in a good position. Thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. See you in the next one.
Thanks for watching the latest video. If you want to help support the channel, I actually own my own wet shaving and grooming e-commerce website where everything's handmade by me. It's www.apexsoaps.com, and you can get a 10% off code using wet shaver. We've got some cool scents here. We've got some Coca-Cola scents, a horchata scent, traditional barbershop, just some really cool stuff. And you can purchase samples or you can buy the whole set. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out via email. Be quick to respond. Thanks for watching.